Michigan, Iowa, Big Ten Championship, as we all expected, right? Welcome to the Voice of College Football in our Iowa Live show as we present to you each and every Tuesday, 5:30 Eastern, 4:30, where it really counts there in Iowa in the Central Time Zone. Right here, the Voice of College Football. Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm always makes this go each and every Tuesday. You can also join him right here on our Iowa channel, which we thank you for pushing us past 1,000 subscribers just here in the last couple of days. And a special guest from the opponent, the enemy, the other side, Justin Rowe. You may have caught him here on the Voice of College Football once or twice as well from the Blue by 90 podcast. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Justin.
Doing well. Yeah. Mark, just like you said, I think both of us just thought from game one of the season till now, we were both going to be here this week, right?
This guy did.
Yeah,
I'm sure you did.
I did. I've tried to keep that under wraps a little bit, Mark, because I don't want to just be gloating all week. But you remember, I called it preseason. I said Iowa will win the West. Now, I again, for anybody who thinks I'm just a homer, I don't predict that every year. So you can go back and look at my record. I do not predict that every year. Now, I wouldn't say it happened the way I expected it to happen, but they did win it outright. So, there's really no reason. There's no asterisk. I saw somebody say there was an asterisk next to Iowa's name. I don't even know the reasoning, but I stopped reading when someone says that. How do you win a division outright and yet claim that it's a fluke or there should be an asterisk next to it? I mean, they're 7-2, tremendous special teams and defense. I get the complaints from Iowa fans, but give me a break.
I agree with you, but I'm also going to play the other side a little bit later in the show. I'm going to take up that argument on the other side.
Play it now, Mark.
Okay. Well, we'll play it right now.
I might be less hostile later.
Well, first, no. We'll first note that my Big Ten championship game prediction was right in line. Everything was working perfectly up until Saturday. Ohio State, Wisconsin. That was my preseason prediction. Okay. I think the people that take exception to Iowa winning the West don't point to the horrific offense or anything like that. That's not necessarily, it is tangible to a certain extent, but Iowa squarely won the West. And as you mentioned, it wasn't even a tiebreaker. They won by a full game. I think they're pointing to the schedule and that Wisconsin had to play Michigan and Penn State.
God,
and those were the two out of division losses. And then they also won the head-to-head against Iowa.
I love you, Mark, and I know where you stand on scheduling. I understand the reasoning. I respect your reasoning. But this is the same crap we dealt with in 2015. You go 12-0, and I know you don't like it when I say you can't control what other teams do on the schedule, and that's absolutely true. You can't control, and I understand what you're saying. That's sort of a weak narrative, but at the same time, it's like, again, coming into the season, Indiana was perceived to be one of the best teams in the East. Iowa State was perceived to be a Big 12 possible favorite. Penn State's on the road. You get Wisconsin on the road. I said from the very beginning, I thought Purdue was going to be a lot better. Nobody was counting Purdue for anything heading into this year. And of course, they ended up being 8-4 and respectable year, no doubt. But I understand that the whole scheduling claims. And again, it's because Indiana didn't pan out. It's because Iowa State didn't pan out. And the other thing I keep hearing this week is, well, you beat Penn State without Sean Clifford. Are we really going to return to that ridiculous commentary? Injuries are part of the game. Do we want to bring up how Riley Moss didn't play in 3 of the last 4 games? He's defensive back of the year, and he didn't play in like 3 of their 4 games, including both of their losses. So I guess we can go there. And you want to argue that quarterback's more important, fine. But, anyways. The other thing is I got burned earlier today because I saw a fake Notre Dame account that tweeted out, welcome Matt Campbell home. And it was a picture of Matt Campbell with a Notre Dame hat. And I was about to rip Levi Stevenson. I was going to tag him in the post. And then I thought, no, it's a fake account. Now, it could still happen. And we can talk about that. I know it's an Iowa-Michigan show. But, man, it got my hopes up for a split second. Then I retweeted it just to troll. And I'm like, I ended up deleting it. I'm like, somebody's going to take this way too seriously. I'm going to lose a ton of followers because of it. So anyways,
Corey,
besides
I'm
the
going to
fact-
say just my only line in all this will be that you just need to embrace your lot in life as an Iowa fan. You're going to be disrespected regardless, so just embrace it.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. Here's what doesn't make any sense. Why is it that every time now you can say that's the reason that they have an 11-2 season or a 12-0 season, but it seems like every year where Iowa is competing for a West title are the years we have a weak schedule. But again, I predicted they would compete before we knew the schedule was quote unquote weak. So it is frustrating. I know we're probably going to spend part of this time, and I want to talk to Justin about this matchup, of course, Mark. But at some point, I promised our listeners that we would discuss what I posted on our channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm Sunday, and that is it possible for Iowa to still make the playoff? The answer to that question is yes, and I think you agree with me on that. I've had people, I think mostly Michigan fans, and by the way, Justin, I have never had anything against Michigan fans. I told Mark about a week ago that I was shocked at the Penn State fans, that I've sort of developed a different mindset about Penn State fans because they've been incessant since that loss. And like no other fan base. I mean, Nebraska is just, they're Nebraska. It's every year with them. But
Right.
Penn State's been the other. Michigan's starting to give Penn State a run for its money this week. Like, I don't know why there's so much hate from Michigan on Iowa. What are we hating? Like, I think these head coaches respect each other. They both earn their spot. Michigan may run through Iowa, but why so much hate prior to this game?
I think Michigan fans are in a different reality than they have been for the past decade, and they don't know what to do with themselves right
You're
now.
probably right.
They honestly have no idea what to do with themselves, and I mean, you kind of have to like understand it a little bit. Like honestly, that we haven't had this type of success and gotten to this point of the year, so. Nobody knows how to act, and I think when if you go back a couple weeks, thinking that this team had a chance to go to the Big Ten championship and then go to the playoff, and it's all setting up as like they could be favored, in the first round of the playoff if they win on Saturday, right? Like that's kind of crazy. So I think that Michigan fans all of a sudden have this really big head, and quite honestly, I'm a little nervous because of it. Honestly, because I don't think this is going to be any type of cakewalk through Iowa. I think that it's going to be strength on strength in terms of Iowa's run defense and Michigan's rushing offense. And I want to hear about how confident you are going into this game. Are you thinking you've got no chance? Is it going to be a close game? Do you feel like you've got a pretty good chance to win? What are you thinking?
Well, again, I'm gonna refer back to Mark on this. Mark, you've worked with me here throughout the season. Would you say that I typically lean a certain way as far as evaluating how I think a game is going to go? I mean, am I pretty much balanced? If I'm not feeling good about a game, I'm pretty upfront about that. If I feel it's going to be close or lopsided, I don't think I'm not a homer on everything, right?
Not at all.
I've gotten accused of being a hater.
I think that your evaluation of this team has been very consistent in that you certainly have recognized the failings and the shortcomings of this team and knew them from the beginning. We're hoping that they would be corrected. They have largely been not been corrected, and you've certainly taken that stance.
What did I say before the season? My two biggest concerns about this team were I said they were going to win the West, which they did, but my two biggest concerns were A, quarterback, and B, O-line. I've said that throughout before the season ever started. Now I fell for it when Iowa ran through Indiana and they run through Iowa State. They beat Penn State. You start to fall for that, these issues are going to be masked. And in the end, they did not. But I guess I'm kind of roundabout going back to Justin's question. And I haven't said this yet on any of our channels, but for any Iowa fan listening, I'm going on the record now. Iowa's going to win this game Saturday. All right. I'm confident in that. And I don't normally. I am by nature a very skeptical, pessimistic fan, and I know that I fight that a lot because I'm go ahead, Mark. I'll go on my rant after you're done.
Iowa's a 10-2 football team. I picked them to go 9-3. I think I was largely close. I don't remember the specific games. I picked them to win or lose. You missed on what games this year? So I'm just trying to nail down your prediction record, even though I believe you nailed their overall record, correct?
I believe I actually had them at 9-3.
9-3.
I had them losing. So if we're talking preseason predictions, of course, I go game by game preseason, and then as we go, I may change a pick. So preseason, I had them losing to Iowa State. I had them losing to Northwestern. Of course, before we knew Northwestern was a dumpster fire. And I believe I had them losing to Penn State. So you could say I missed all of those. As we went on with the season, certainly I picked Iowa against Northwestern. I did pick Wisconsin to beat Iowa, which ended up happening. The one I really missed, I also picked Iowa to beat Iowa State, by the way, I believe. Again, I have to look back. But the one I really missed was the Purdue loss. That one totally blindsided me, and it shouldn't have, given Iowa's struggles against David Bell and Jeff Brom. But I don't normally in a game like this, Justin, I'm very, very skeptical, and I'm just negative in general. And I just think, well, and I don't think Iowa has any pressure in this game. I don't think they're playing with any pressure at all. And that's part of the reason why I think I feel so good about it. Because like 2015, perfect example. You're 12-0 all year. Everybody's hating on you. And sort of like Michigan, they're in a position, same situation. You win this game, you are clearly in the playoff. There is no doubt about it. All right. I think if Iowa wins this game, Mark, there's a chance you're in the playoff, but probably not. Even if you win the game, you win by 20, I think you're probably still not in. I went through the scenarios, and we can talk about those. But I just think the combination of Michigan coming off this win against Ohio State, which is the biggest win under Jim Harbaugh, no question about it. I don't think any Michigan fan is going to argue that. It's the biggest win under Jim Harbaugh, combined with the fact that Iowa traditionally does match up pretty well with Michigan or Iowa. I shouldn't say that. Iowa lost in 2019 against Michigan, right? 10-3. It was a terrible, terrible performance up front, the interior of the line. But typically, Iowa matches up a lot better with Michigan than Ohio State. So you got the hangover factor. You have the coaching factor. I think these players, Kirk Ferentz was very emotional today in his press conference, which I heard was it Rick Pizzo for Big Ten Network asked Kirk a question after the Nebraska game. We don't see you get very emotional very often, Kirk. Thinking, Rick, where have you been the last 23 years? He's always crying. I mean, it is what it is. He's always crying. So that was kind of ridiculous. But I just think these guys are ready. It sounds like they're going to get Terry Roberts back. And that's something I said Sunday. And I think I said it to you, Mark, too. Saturday, with Don Patterson. If he can come back at corner for Iowa this week, that will be absolutely massive. Because, and I don't know that they'll do this, but one thing Iowa refuses to do against Wisconsin is to sell out against the run, which you should always do against Wisconsin. That's how Minnesota won that game. And they basically said, hey, we're going to put our corners on an island. And if you're going to throw over the top and our corners get beat, we're just going to tell our corners, take a pass interference, wrap them up. We'll take 15 yards over 30 any day. And that's exactly what they did. Worked to perfection. So this is what Iowa should be doing against Wisconsin every year. And for some reason, we refuse to adjust and do that. But I think Iowa has an opportunity this week to do that if Terry Roberts is healthy. I don't want that if Jamari Harris is on an island. But if you have Terry Roberts and Riley Moss back there, Matt Hankins ain't playing. But those two guys, I just have a good feeling about this. To me, this is the kind of game where Kirk comes through. And I could be dead wrong. I mean, I'm not, mortgaging my house or anything like that. But I think there's an opportunity for Iowa to shock a lot of people Saturday. No question about it. And that will be my prediction Friday night.
Since I don't know how long we'll have Justin here, we'll let Justin cut loose on this one. 10.5-point favorite. How do you feel?
I think the reason that I disagree with you, Corey, is that I feel like Iowa peaked quite a long time ago in their season. I think that they haven't been playing great football lately in the past, month, maybe even more, and probably a month and a half now. So now I think their win on Saturday against Nebraska was a good win. We joked about it on our last show, Mark, about Nebraska being the most ridiculous football team of all time this year. Like, it's just insanity. But I still think they're a good and talented football team. The reason that I, think that Michigan will win this game, though, is that unlike Iowa, when they peaked, a month and a half ago, Michigan feels like it's peaking right now. I think they're playing in the best football that they have in probably 5 years at this very moment. And the other thing that I think is that a guy like Aiden Hutchinson is playing for his life right now, essentially. He's playing himself into a Heisman Trophy conversation that nobody in the world was talking about 2 weeks ago, playing for a Big Ten championship that Michigan hasn't had. I mean, if they win this game, they might build a statue of Aiden Hutchinson, honestly. And for him and Jim Harbaugh, we've seen the emotions all year long of them embracing after the Nebraska win, embracing after Penn State, embracing after Ohio State. I think they're on this like different level of the will to win more, and then so there's that on top of just being really talented and having guys play up to the best that they have. I mean, it's kind of funny. You go back and look at the bottom of Michigan's, I believe it was 2018 recruiting class, was Hassan Haskins. Luke Schoonmaker was the tight end. There's a couple of Jake Moody was on there, that kicker that we just talked about getting Big Ten Player of the Year. So that's why I think Michigan's going to win the game. Now, at the same time, I'm not overly confident. I don't think they're going to go out and kick their ass and say, all right, Michigan's going to dominate this game. I would, if I was betting, probably bet the spread. I would take the points because 10.5 or 11 seems like a lot of points for this game. But I still think Michigan's going to tough it out. I think it is, like I said, it's strength on strength. So it's Michigan's rushing offense versus Iowa's rush defense. I think that Michigan has more opportunity on the offensive side of the ball than Iowa does, though, where I think that I think Iowa's really going to struggle to move the ball against Michigan. I don't see them. And so it's going to be Petrus. Is that right? Instead of Padilla?
That's what the depth chart says. That's what Kirk's saying. But I believe you me, if he's struggling, I don't care if it's a neutral site game. The crowd is going to be all over Kirk Ferentz, and he'll make that change.
Yeah, and I think that's that's another. You just brought up another point, is the crowd. My brother was actually at the 2015 Big Ten championship game. He said Iowa fans were insane. It was the IOWA around the whole stadium going ballistic. I think I know Iowa fans will be going nuts, but I think Michigan will still have that energy advantage because it's been 5 years for you guys. It's been 15 never to Indy, right, for this game. So I think Michigan fans are going to travel like crazy, as they always do. And so I think if Michigan can get on Petrus or Padilla early, the same way that they did Stroud, then all of a sudden Iowa could be back on their heels and not really be able to move the ball much. And then Michigan will kind of slowly but surely get that offense going and put up some points.
Well, let me just say this, and you alluded to the fact that you thought Iowa's sort of peaked earlier in the season, and I understand why you're saying that. Let's remember, though, that this offense has been bad all year. And you're right, the number of turnovers that Iowa created early was just astronomical. It was ridiculous, and that hasn't continued and hasn't sustained itself. But Iowa has won 4 straight games. And might I remind you, Justin, 2016, of course, we all remember the infamous Keith Duncan kick on Saturday Night Football on ABC to take down Jim Harbaugh's Wolverines, and, of course, Manny Rugumba's improbable interception along the sidelines. Of course, C.J. Beathard was there that year. That was not a good year for Iowa football. There was a lot of hype going into that year, and Mark, losing to North Dakota State at home, that was a real disappointing season. I mean, you can rank that right up there with 2010.
But you know where it was? It was at Kinnick at night.
Well, so that, I guess that that brings up the question: will there be more Iowa fans in Michigan? I think there'll be more Iowa fans there. I think a lot of Michigan fans were at the Big House. That was their investment, buddy boy. That was their investment. I have a hard time. Do we really think that they're going to be? I mean, how many just ridiculously wealthy Michigan fans? I'm sure there's a lot of them, but
a lot.
Okay, but let's think about this. So you're saying, because how much is an average ticket to go to the Big House for Ohio? I mean, how much were the tickets on Saturday?
Saturday. Face value was like $150, but they were going for $250 to $300.
Okay, so that's actually a little bit less than I anticipated. So tickets now for the Big Ten title game are, I think, over $300. If you're buying now on like StubHub or some other outlet. So I just question whether there'll be more Michigan fans than Iowa fans for two reasons. You brought up Iowa traveling. Of course, they have a history of traveling there. And then the other thing is I think Michigan fans sort of maybe not completely. I'm not saying there's not going to be a lot of fans there, but I just wonder how much last week took a toll on their expense accounts, if you will.
It's funny you say that too, because I was on the phone with my dad about 20 minutes ago, and I'm talking. I go, I've got 2 tickets for you. What do you want to do? Here's the price, blah blah blah. And he's like, well, last week was pretty expensive, and my response was, Dad, we haven't had to pay for this weekend for a decade. I've been saving up. We didn't spend it. So
you're right.
I mean, I hear what you're saying 100%. I don't doubt. It's not that I don't think Iowa's going to travel. That's not the part I'm saying. I think it's more so this has been so long coming for Michigan fans that. And the wealthy Michigan fan comment, Mark raised his eyebrows. I'm on the lower end of that. There are plenty of very wealthy.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt about that. And you're right. It's probably one of the wealthier Big Ten fan bases. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be my guess.
So. Here's the other thing that's a factor here, guys, is all these tickets it was sold out. Wasn't it sold out before the games went final? So, I mean, I think most of these ticket holders were likely – now, some of them were Iowa fans. I know Iowa fans jumped all over the 6-0 start.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised a lot of the tickets that were purchased early on were Ohio State and Wisconsin fans. So
that's probably a good call.
So there are probably going to be a lot of tickets purchased by these two fan bases that are much higher than face value, if that makes sense, because they're being bought off StubHub. So that's sort of an interesting storyline, and you're right. There's probably plenty of wealthy Michigan fans to go to both games, but that is an interesting storyline. I will say, going back to 2016 though, that win in Kinnick. Does anybody? And I don't expect you to remember this, Justin, but Mark's the voice of college football, so I'll ask him. Do you remember what Iowa's result the week prior to the Michigan win in 2016 was?
The week prior.
I bet you a lot of Iowa fans remember this.
Well, it was a disappointing season. I can't even recollect what they finished that season, but I'm going to guess that it was some kind of disappointing. I know that was a 9-0 Michigan team, 8-0, 9-0, something in that range. So we're talking late October, early November games. So they must have played did they lose to Minnesota?
So it was November 12th. It was preceded by a game at Penn State where Iowa got curb stomped 41-14.
Yeah, okay. I remember that game.
And it was a total just unraveling by Iowa. And to come back the next week and to play that way against Michigan. So that's what gives me this is nothing new to Kirk Ferentz. Like, go back to last year. You have the offseason claims of racial injustice. You have a lawsuit that was brought up against Iowa and against the coaching staff the week of game one. You then go into week one, you lose a game that you basically threw away with penalties and turnovers on the road at Purdue. You then blow a 17-0 lead against Northwestern by throwing the ball 51 times with a quarterback who couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, Spencer Petras, and lose that game, blow a 17-0 lead against Northwestern. You're 0-2. Some of the fan base is calling for your head. Nobody wants Petras to start. What do? They come back, win 6 straight games. So this is not Kirk Ferentz, and it's a perfect example this year, too. I mean, you're 6-0, then you lose 2 straight games where you get blown out. They respond with 4 straight wins. So I don't think Kirk Ferentz's teams, Justin, can be ever discounted or discredited based on recent results. And I'm talking
when they're playing or how they're playing at this exact
a week
time,
or two. Yes. You just never know what's going to happen. That's one of the things you love about Kirk. And I've had my criticisms of Kirk, especially with the offense. But the dude is resilient, all right? And he never seems to lose a football team. I don't know what happened in 2012. It was the one year they went 4-8, right? Since he's turned the program around. They went 4-8 in 18, or excuse me, 12. It was a really bad year as far as injuries. But other than that year, it seems like he always figures out a way to turn it around. Even if it's a down season, they turn it around the next year. It's never this deep fall for Iowa.
Doesn't the East just win the championship game regardless?
I thought they just handed to the winner of the East. I didn't know.
Well,
I've never
Mark,
gotten this far, so you guys help me out.
well, remember Nebraska, Wisconsin. Those were two West teams that played for it in what was it 2012?
Well,
That's
they
like a lifetime
split it
ago.
in 2014. You're going back to legends and leaders.
Yeah.
era.
What do you mean they split it in? Yeah, I understand.
In 2014, they went to East-West.
Right, but I'm saying that the Wisconsin Nebraska game was two West teams, right? I mean, not at the time, but
Yes,
currently there's two West teams. But you're right.
Yes.
And let's be honest, the 15 game was heart wrenching for every Iowa fan. It's the single. Iowa doesn't. We all know Iowa doesn't have the history that Michigan does. I mean, we're not joking anybody on that, but like that is the single of my life as an Iowa guy. That is the single most painful moment of my Iowa fandom. There's nothing even close to the 2015 game. So, like I said, and I think it's clear that Kirk respects Jim Harbaugh. I don't think he's probably, cuddling up with Jim Harbaugh. These guys aren't buddy, but I think they both respect each other. It's not like Kirk and PJ or Kirk and Scott Frost. So, although I think Kirk probably has a decent feeling about PJ now, but I think there's a lot of respect with these programs. If Iowa can sell out against the run, I know we haven't really been given substance to anybody, but if Iowa can sell out against the run and rely on a healthy Moss and a healthy Roberts, with Harris coming in, if they're going to run any nickel with a third corner or dime, which they don't do a lot of, and they probably won't against Michigan anyways. But if they can rely on those two guys, I think Iowa's got a very good chance. Like I said, I would not be shocked to see Michigan win. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see them win by double figures. If it's lopsided, I'll be surprised, not shocked, because I think Michigan's the better team. But like I said, I have a very good feeling, and I don't usually make picks based on a hunch. I just have a really good feeling about this game on Saturday.
Ferentz can't get that close to Jim Harbaugh because that's Ryan Day's spot. Their best buddy.
Really?
Buds.
Yeah,
that
press conference on Saturday from Jim might say otherwise.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny to think about, obviously, with last Saturday being the biggest game. How many biggest games of Jim Harbaugh's career have there been in the last 7 years? It seems like it's every third week, right? But that one was the biggest one so far, and it turned out to be, a success. But how about after that? You kind of almost go into a trap game in the Big Ten championship game. It's like this weird feeling, and having Iowa be there seems pretty fitting, does it not? It's this weird thing where it's like all of a sudden the Big Ten championship game isn't even the biggest game of the year for you, right? Isn't even the biggest game in the last 2 weeks, right? So I think that definitely it's cause for concern for Michigan fans to think, all right, is there going to be this letdown? The emotions on Saturday in Ann Arbor were unreal. There has to be a little bit of I was exhausted and I didn't play a snap, right? I was physically, emotionally, mentally drained, and so for these guys, they have to be feeling very similar, at least for the couple days. But
That's how
I know
felt
they
after
came
the Minnesota Wisconsin game. So we were on the same page
right
on Saturday.
All right, good. I'm glad to know I'm not the only crazy person that gets that invested in it.
You guys beat
but
Minnesota almost every year. Justin's talking about
No.
Once
I'm
in a
talking
lifetime.
20 years of frustration.
No, Mark. I was exhausted after the Minnesota Wisconsin game Saturday.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Implications.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So I think there's that. Aiden Hutchinson and Cade McNamara both came out and said it. We enjoyed our victory on Saturday night and Sunday, but we turned the page to Iowa already. They said all that. It's how much of that is coach speak, and player speak and all that stuff, and how much is it real? I do think that they're on a mission, though. It does feel like this is a player-led team. Jim Harbaugh has done a great job to empower his guys and have guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Ross, Brad Hawkins, and Cade McNamara, Hassan Haskins, obviously, too, lead this team. And it feels like they're they're not going to be just satisfied with that win against Ohio State. So I'd be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if they lost this game because of everything, but I'd be shocked if they laid down and let Iowa, dominate them, right? And so I think that's the one thing I would say. You said you wouldn't be shocked if Michigan won by double digits. I would be shocked if Michigan lost by double digits. That's like the only thing that would really surprise me in this game.
I would too. I would be shocked if Iowa wins this game by double digits. If Iowa wins this game, it's going to be close. Mark, do you envision a scenario where Iowa just steamrolls through the Wolverines?
Iowa doesn't beat anyone by double digits, or at least this Iowa team.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say they were doing that early in the season. I guess if Cade McNamara throws 3 picks and that is, as much as we want to talk about, and this was the talk Saturday night with Don. We want to talk about opening it up, right? Taking shots, getting Keegan Johnson involved, jumping over people, running through people. How about we just talk about what Iowa did to get here? And that is Tory Taylor, Charlie Jones, who, by the way, Tory Taylor, 3rd punter listed on the All Big Ten honorees. There's a lot of good punters in the Big Ten in the country this year, Mark. That's something that you need to do a video on quickly. But the bottom line is
all rave reviews, the punting video.
You get a lot of Iowa fans. We put it on this channel, actually. But they got here with Tory Taylor, Charlie Jones, Caleb Shudak, this defense. That is what's going to win this game, folks. It's not going to be, okay, Spencer Petras comes in here and turns into Johnny Unitas, or Alex Padilla comes in here and looks like Kyler Murray. No, this is going to be a ground 'em, pound 'em game, and that's how Iowa wants it to be. I mean, Michigan has the best rushing offense in the Big Ten, and let's remember that Iowa really struggled to contain the run of Wisconsin. They struggled to contain the run of Minnesota. So teams that are run heavy, Iowa's actually not done very well against this year. So I'm banking on, and maybe this is foolish.
Mark,
you're not selling your prediction very well.
I'm banking on the fact that Kirk recognizes that at this point, this is the biggest game of his career. 15 at the time was the biggest game of his career, right? They lost. This is the next biggest game of his career to win. So I would think if there's any time to change, just tweak, not change, but tweak an aspect of this defense that is already superb, but struggles in certain circumstances, like the David Bell game where you refuse to double cover maybe the best receiver in the Big Ten, or these Wisconsin-Minnesota games where Iowa just refuses to sell out against the run. To me, this is the time to tweak those things, and I think they will. I just think I just can't imagine them not. Again, an extra day of prep. They watched that Michigan-Ohio State game from home. I think they'll be ready to negate what. It's certainly better than Ohio State did, because Ohio State's defense has not been very good all year, minus the Michigan State game.
I'm looking at Iowa's schedule as well. You think this is a Michigan offense. I know they're run heavy, but it is unlike most Michigan offenses that they've had in the past 5 years under Harbaugh. They still ground and pound, but they score a lot of points. They put up points. They were right up there with Ohio State this year in terms of scoring offense. They didn't do it nearly as explosive. I'm not going to say that they had as good of an offense as Ohio State, but in terms of a scoring offense, they're pretty dang close. And so when I'm looking at the offenses that Iowa went up against here, Nebraska's offense I think was pretty solid, but had their issues with turnovers and all that stuff, which obviously was a main, factor in Iowa winning that game on Saturday. I don't know. Is there an offense even close to Michigan's offense that was on Iowa's schedule this year?
No.
Well, not in hindsight. I mean, Purdue's offense through the air.
Yeah, through the air.
Really prolific.
Near elite through the air.
But nobody that pairs an elite running attack with an elite passing attack. I mean, Minnesota and Wisconsin, although Minnesota, I thought threw the ball pretty effectively against Wisconsin, which was a shock on Saturday. But besides that, I would say you're right. Purdue would probably be the best passing attack, and certainly Minnesota and Wisconsin on the ground.
When I think of Iowa, Michigan, and I think Iowa's going to play it much better than this, much closer than this, but the first vision that comes into my head, Corey, is anticipating what I anticipated when Iowa went to Wisconsin, and I got exactly what I was expecting. and it was pretty ugly. I don't know how I was going to score in this game.
I agree
That's
with you,
okay.
Mark. What do you mean that's okay?
Just
They
That's
got
okay,
scored
because
over.
I see these comments in
points
this
against
is
that
why
defense.
okay, but this is why
they don't have
it's
the
okay.
offensive line. They don't have the explosive play. I just don't see how they're going to score.
Okay, but this is exactly what the Michigan fans who are on this channel are saying. Malachi comments, I just don't see how Iowa can win this game. This is literally exactly what Kirk wants the narrative to be.
I understand that
I understand it comes down to X's and O's.
You go out there and you have to execute it.
2017.
So you can be motivated as much as you want, but it has to be executed. And I think Iowa's a tremendous team. I think they are one of the 15 best teams in the country, but I think Michigan's one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country.
Let's just remember 2017, the offense was bad. I mean, it's been bad every year, Mark. There's never a year where this offense is good. Now, you could say it's worse now than normal. But
they've had a good. I mean, they've had great offensive lines and a good run game in the past.
Okay, that's just false. Okay, that's absolutely false. They've had good individual offensive linemen, but anybody that follows Iowa football knows they cumulatively do not have elite offensive lines. The 2016 team that won the Joe Moore Award, that offensive line was not Joe Moore Award. I mean, there's so many things that go into these awards. We obviously know.
Was I about to hear about double nickels in 2017?
I was going to bring up the fact we brought up 2016. Nobody expect you to get blown out by Penn State. Nobody expects you to do anything against Michigan. They win. 2017, right? The Ohio State win. Nobody saw that coming, right? Nobody would have predicted it. Nobody thought Iowa had the horses. They find a way. So, and I saw the real Hayden says, Kirk's been doing this for 23 years. He ain't changing now. I'm not saying that they need to change, just, create a reinvention of this entire team. Like, I think the offense needs to be reinvented in the offseason. That won't happen, but I think it needs to be. But going back to the defensive point, I'm just talking about tweaking, right? Because this defense, Phil Parker knows he's one of the best, most underrated coordinators in the country. I just think tweaking this defense, and he's done that before. Again, those games that we just brought up. So, I'm fine with people saying I don't see how Iowa wins this game. That
wasn't my statement. My statement is more if Michigan brings a similar game to the table as Iowa, meaning if Michigan brings their A game and Iowa brings their A game, or Michigan brings their C and Iowa brings their C, I can see a script that plays out where Iowa gets a couple picks. Stretching it past 2 would be something because Cade McNamara doesn't give it up through the air, but creates a couple turnovers plus a special teams play. And it's a 20-17 kind of game.
Yeah,
I can see that.
Yeah, and you're right. So and I'm not predicting Iowa's going to score a ton of points. Believe me, and I think I led with that. They're not going to blow Michigan out of the water. It's going to be a high-scoring affair. And again, I established that I'm not going to be shocked if Michigan runs through Iowa and wins by 10. I'll be shocked if they win by much more than that, or surprised, I should say. I just think, again, given the hangover effect from Michigan, given Kirk Ferentz's history, everybody's counting him out. The line is pretty ridiculous, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I mean, getting to double digits, I thought was like, I think I said, wow. I literally said, wow. I expected it to be 7.5 or 8 or something like that. But I mean, I think that I'm not. Listen, I think I led off with that. I'm not overly confident, and there's definitely cause for concern with Michigan in this game. This isn't like I don't expect them to roll, but then when me and Mark are talking about hey, how is Iowa going to score? That's where I start to think about strength on strength, strength on weakness. And you watch what Aiden Hutchinson did to a projected first-round pick last week at Ohio State's left tackle, and I just expect him to do very similar things. And so I think this your quarterback situation could be in a lot of trouble on Saturday. And so that's where I see I don't know. I think I'm pretty confident in that happening. I just don't know the other side of it, where what will Michigan's offense be able to do against Iowa's defense?
Yeah, the thing I'll say about the point spread real quick, Corey, and then I'll let you go. maybe Vegas is connecting the dots. The dots being that Ohio State murdered tons of teams in the Big Ten before they even got to Purdue and Michigan State. They were just obliterating, like putting up beyond what the final score was, 45 points in the first half against Indiana and Rutgers, and obliterating. Those aren't good football teams, but Ohio State was doing to them what nobody else was doing to them. And so then once they hit Purdue, and they were a 21-point favorite, considering Purdue's coming off wins against Iowa and Michigan State, I was included in saying, what is Vegas doing? 21 points? Ohio State blows that line away. Then they hit Michigan State. They're a 19-point favorite against Michigan State, a top 5. They crushed them. It's 49-0 at half. And then look what Michigan does to Ohio State.
Well, here's a couple things. Michigan State, they're talk about bad units. Their defense is terrible. It's been terrible all year. So we all had Michigan State overrated, right, Mark? You're going to say no because you're going to say you had them right where
overrated. They're a good team, though.
Their defense is terrible.
They're a top 15 team in the country.
And by the way,
from my perspective, I mean, it makes me sick that Michigan lost to them because they should have been 12-0.
How'd Michigan lose to them, Mark? How'd Michigan lose to them? Why didn't Michigan's run? Why wasn't Michigan able to just control the game on the ground and do whatever they wanted offensively? I mean, it was a fairly high scoring game, right? What was the final score?
Michigan State's rush defense
37-33.
Michigan State's rush defense is pretty damn good.
Yes, their secondary is awful.
It's awful, but it's statistically, again, this is where statistics can play a little bit, where they've got the worst pass defense in the country statistically. Michigan State does. But Miami's throwing the ball 59 times against them. Indiana, 52 times. Again, yards per play, yards per pass, they were only 35th in the country a week ago. That's not bad.
Like I said, I'm not trying to spew a bunch of X's and O's. I've said very clearly that I think Iowa's going to win this game. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I'm confident that Iowa will. Right now, I'm confident they'll win this game, which nobody else is, right, Mark? You can call me a fool. We'll talk after Saturday night. But I'm confident they win this game. I could be wrong. I'm admitting I could be wrong. I'm not going to put myself out on an island and say, shoot me if I'm wrong. But again, there is a blueprint to beat Michigan, and that's what Michigan State did. Now, Michigan State is built totally different than Iowa. I get that. So we want to talk X's and O's. I mentioned being willing to stack the box more than Iowa normally does, right? Second thing on offense, you've got to – I kind of downplayed opening things up. They're going to have to open things up a little bit. Like Michigan State, their exotics caused Michigan some issues in that game, did they not? As I recall.
I mean, what it came down to was Kenneth Walker just making shit happen, essentially.
Sure.
Out of nowhere. So
there were some trick plays, correct?
Yeah, there were a couple of trick plays. Yep, for sure.
So I mean, I think you have to that's going to be a factor that, and I again, we haven't seen it much, but we've seen Kirk do it in the past. So let's not lose our marbles and say Kirk's never willing to throw a trick play I mean, I think again, 2017-18, there were a ton of trick plays that Iowa ran, especially on special teams. You may have to do that on Saturday. Those are the only two X's and O's I'm going to throw out there. The rest is just a feeling about this game, Mark.
Michigan State doesn't win that game if Peyton Thorne doesn't throw a pass on 4th and 5. I think that Aaron Rodgers seems like the only person on earth that could throw that ball. Like it was
the most perfect, and just sliding right underneath it after Michigan put them back to 4th and 9, I think it was, and they hadn't moved the ball in 3 possessions. It was every single thing aligned for Michigan State to win that game at the end of it. So, I do got to run, but I wanted to, finish up with a few things here. I don't think you're crazy for thinking that Iowa can win this game. I think you're a little crazy for being as confident as you seem.
Delusional. That's what the chat's. Everybody in the chat's calling me delusional. So it's not crazy. It's delusional. Get it right, Justin.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I'll try to stay consistent here.
Okay.
But I think that, I think that when you look at the strengths and weaknesses of each team, it really favors Michigan. When you look at what Michigan was able to do, their offensive line last week played one of the best games I've ever seen an offensive line play. They pushed the Ohio State's defensive line around. And I know Ohio State's defense is nothing great. They've obviously had their issues this year, but they still have a ton of talent, right? And for them to just push them around was really impressive. So
You're right. You're right.
that's where I feel like, you have – go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was like,
You're
that
good.
that was one of those bubbles that should have shot up over my head while you were talking. That Ohio State, they got 3 5-stars just on the defensive line, and they're getting pushed all up and down the field. So, go ahead.
Yeah,
you're right.
So, I mean, I just have a hard time seeing Michigan. I think they're a very different team than when that run game struggled against Michigan State. That seems like, it's a month ago now, right? And so for what they've been able to do in the past 4 weeks, I think that this offense is now clicking on all cylinders. And what they showed in that Michigan State game is, if you stop the run, Cade McNamara can throw the ball. I know Michigan State's defensive secondary is, really poor compared to what Iowa can probably put together on Saturday, but Cade can still throw the ball. So it's not like if you stop the run on Michigan, they have nowhere to go. Michigan still scored 33 points on them. If I had to bet one thing, it'd be that Iowa's not going to score 33 points on Saturday.
Yeah, and just before you go, Justin, I just want to reiterate something. That I'm not trying to sound pompous or overconfident here.
I know.
Because again, if anybody, and I know all the Michigan fans who are on here probably just think that's how I sound. But again, go back and listen to my content in the past. I don't normally put myself out there in predicting an Iowa win. I just have a feeling, and I don't normally have that feeling. I could be totally off, but I just have a feeling about this game that I haven't had in a long time, including the 2015 game against Michigan State. I was a nervous wreck for that game. I just think they're playing with house money. But again, I love the fact that this game's against Michigan, not Ohio State, because I'd like to see Michigan. If Iowa loses, I want to see Michigan in the playoff. I want to see them win a national title. So for the record, I'm going Big Ten all the way. I'd love to see Iowa ruin it.
And you would not have been rooting for Ohio State to continue on to a playoff?
No, I would have. I would have been. But at the same time, we've seen them there, Mark. I want to see Michigan. I want to see a different – I know you're an Ohio State fan. I want to see Michigan –
this kills me. Like, this is going to seem like forever until next year when we can get some payback and get back to the playoff. Like, I don't know how you guys put up with 10 and 20 years at a time. Like, it seems like forever now. Last year's playoff national championship game.
That has been hilarious for the past 48 hours on social media, because I thought that Ohio State fans would be able to say, all right, you got your one. We'll let you have it. Go have fun. We'll be back next year. They really haven't. They've been sour from the moment the game ended. So yeah, it's nice for you guys to taste this a little bit here and there.
Justin, you and the other Michigan fans in the live chat, you can rest a little easier knowing that I'll most likely pick Michigan. I've not made my prediction, and I've got a better record than Corey.
You do have a better record.
That.
You do have I'd like to compare our records on the Iowa games, Mark. We need to go back and do that. Let's compare our record on Iowa games when we're done.
There you go. There you go.
Justin,
well,
thank you so much.
No problem, guys. I appreciate having me on. And hey, you know what? No matter what happens, I will be very disappointed if Michigan loses, but I'm enjoying this week because we haven't been here before. And I think most Michigan fans are right there with me saying, hey, let's have fun. We're all going to, get together in Indy and enjoy it. And I've heard it's one of the greatest environments of all sports is to get there in Indy. And so I think a lot of fans are excited and behind this team. Has there been a more likable Michigan team? Mark, is Jim Harbaugh is he likable right now to you even? This is kind of crazy.
I liked Jim Harbaugh. See, people that watch me on a regular basis that either know or don't know that I'm an Ohio State fan, and if they don't know, they just assume I'm okay with Michigan because if anything, I've come to Jim Harbaugh's defense on a regular basis. I have evaluated Michigan, I believe, unbiasedly, and and given them all sorts of props when warranted. So, yeah, I've always liked Jim Harbaugh. I think he's had an outstanding coaching career. I've defended him.
Yes, I think
consistently.
you're very different than most Ohio State fans. You have to.
Well, yeah, there's no question about that, because
Yeah. So
I'm trying to earn a dollar or two doing this, so I have to be.
There you go. There you go.
I will say again, I love the Michigan fan. I've never had an issue with the Michigan fan base. Mark may feel differently, but let's all try to be nice to each other this week. I don't go out there ripping Iowa fans, and it's like these Michigan fans are coming over to the Iowa channel all week long and just ripping the heck out of everything Iowa, and I don't get it.
The Michigan fans have been phenomenal to me. They've boosted up my channel. Shoot, Justin and I just produced a video. It's only 24 hours old. It's got like 14,000 views. And that's every week.
Love it. Love it.
One last thing real quick before you go, Justin.
Be nice to Corey. Be nice to Corey out there, Michigan fans, please. He's a good guy. He's not doing anything wrong. I know he's predicting Iowa to win.
Well, that's what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, well, he's delusional. He said it himself.
You're right.
So it's all right.
I'm delusional. I'll take it.
All
right, Justin,
I'm out of here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Justin.
We'll talk to you later.
You know, the thing I'll say, Corey, is let's say you were taking a neutral stance saying, hey, I don't know what's going to happen here. Michigan probably wins the game. They're the better team. And that was it. Let's say Justin was on here saying Michigan kills Iowa. No doubt, no question. I would be the one. I think you understand my style at this point. I would then be pushing back against that narrative to point out all the times during college football history that we've had a David versus Goliath matchup, and when that didn't hold to script and the upset occurred. So,
and like I said, Mark, just go back to the history. I mean, like I said, some of these matchups where nobody's counting Iowa, giving Iowa a chance, and they do show up and shock the world. It happens a lot. We seem to have some Iowa fans even have short-term memory about this. Like, it happens a lot more than we expect. And like I said, I could be wrong on it. I will say this: somebody made a comment about Deuce Hogan, and I'll steal the pun here. They lost one deuce today. Let's hope they don't drop another deuce on Saturday. All right, I'll say that. So
well done.
For anybody who didn't hear about that, I guess it was on my channel earlier today that Iowa quarterback Deuce Hogan did enter the transfer portal. Not a shock. A little bit surprised at timing. They have, now the question is who's QB3? It's got to be Joey Labus, because he's the only other quarterback on scholarship on the roster. They don't have any walk-on quarterbacks right now on the roster. So I wonder, 3 should be plenty, but I wonder if somebody is going to be making a position change this week, just in case. The flu bug really hit Iowa hard last week. In fact, Padilla and Petrus both got it last week and recovered. So actually, I guess that's a positive to say they're probably not going to get it again this next week. But yeah, that's disappointing to a lot of fans. Iowa fans were high on Deuce Hogan when he got here out of Texas and never really got a shot in the field. I said during my segment on my channel earlier today, Mark, that we were all made to believe in early 2020 when Kirk anointed Spencer Petrus in the offseason. It was like January. We were all made to believe that it was clear that Petrus was the best guy on the roster, and there was a huge gap between Petrus and Padilla. And I think it's obvious now, and I know things can change in a season or two's time, but I think things have changed now to where we can at least look at the quarterback situation in Iowa and say, look, these gaps that we're made to believe exist aren't really there. Like, there's not this huge gap between Petrus and Padilla. That's been obvious. So that's why I threw out the idea, and it's not going to make anybody happy because he's gone, but it makes me wonder, what would Hogan have done in a game? We'll never know. So, and I don't know how I guess I don't ever really pay much attention. I don't know how the portal works as far as, like, is a guy going to be on the sidelines? You anticipate him be on the sidelines for the game on Saturday, Mark? Would you think?
I don't believe so. I don't think that's been the norm once a player is declared.
Yeah, so it would be Joey Labus. So that will be interesting. I hope that doesn't happen. I've heard great things, by the way, about Joey as far as just preseason and practice during this season. They've been great, or he's been great, as has Hogan, from what Kirk has said. So it's disappointing that Hogan's gone and we'll never get a chance to see him. But he was, you got to remember, he was also a pro-style quarterback. All these people went in Iowa to recruit more dual threats. He was 6'4". I mean, he was more mobile than Spencer, but it's not like he was Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson. He runs the same style of system, and they got Carson May coming in next year at 6'5", who's kind of a statue as well. So Kirk did say this week, and he released the depth chart yesterday. It's Petrus as the starter. There's no, sometimes they'll list a starter and then they'll use the word or, and then they'll go to the next guy. So it's sort of an even competition. But Kirk has anointed Petrus. He said he's going with his gut feeling, Mark. And I did see John Miller, who has covered Iowa for years, bringing up, I guess in 2000, would it be 8, when the switch was made? No, was it 2008? I believe it was when they made the switch from Jake Christensen. It was 8, from Christensen to Stanzi. And I guess Kirk Ferentz used the term gut feeling amidst all that, because they actually switched back. They started with Jake. I believe they went to Ricky, and then they went back to Jake at some point. I could be wrong on that. Again, 2008 was such a long time ago. That's incredible to think it was 13 years ago. But I believe he used that term gut feeling when he switched back to Jake. So that makes me a little bit nervous. I wouldn't say Kirk he's not a quarterback guru at all. I mean, I don't think he would claim that either. So that concerns me a bit.
Corey, I would say in watching the Nebraska game, and the stats will not bear this out because statistically they were about even. I believe Padilla was like 6 of 14 and Petrus 7 of 13 for about 100 yards. And certainly it wasn't the offense. It was the special teams play and the defense that carried them to the 22 straight points for the most part and the comeback. But during that one, and I don't remember when the change was made, sometime in the third quarter.
Oh, it was made at halftime.
Halftime.
Yeah.
So Petrus did lead, obviously, the one offensive touchdown drive in the fourth quarter, and also led an earlier drive that Goodson fumbled inside the 5 that would have been another touchdown on a Petrus-led drive. So I thought he threw the ball better than Padilla. I distinctly remember thinking he's throwing the ball better in this particular game.
He also had some bad misses in that game, Mark. Like there was a play down in the red zone to Sam Laporta on 3rd and 10 where Laporta was just wide open and he airmailed it. Yeah. And there were a couple of those. So I agree with you. I think this is, and I've stuck with the, I've been consistent on this as well. Petrus is a far better downfield passer. Well, maybe I shouldn't say far better. He's a better downfield passer. Alex has shown he can get the ball downfield, but Spencer has a really nice deep ball. And sometimes we don't give him credit for that. As far as intermediate routes, I'd probably give the nod to Alex, but they're very close. Mobility, I'd give the nod to Alex. So it's a very close, if you're just looking at those, I mean, I think both guys seem comfortable with the playbook at this point. I mean, the playbook at Iowa, I don't think is all that complicated at quarterback. Evaluating, I mean, Coach Patterson has always brought this up, and I would agree with him. And of course, he knows a lot better than I do. Oftentimes, way too much credit is given to a quarterback, especially with a system like Iowa. We always hear this. That's what the Iowa media has turned to over the past year or two, and I understand that they're speaking honestly that they believe that we shouldn't question Spencer. This was back before Petrus got hurt. We shouldn't have questioned Spencer Petrus being the starter because he won 6 straight games to start last year or to end last year, and he won 6 straight games to begin this year. And the fact of the matter is, that's not sound reasoning, because it is possible to win in spite of your quarterback. That's what Don always says. It is possible to win in spite of your starting quarterback. So, Iowa won 12 straight games during that stretch, but let's not act like, okay, that was because of Spencer Petrus. And I'm not saying he never did good things. He has made throws that really did make me say, wow. I mean, I think back to the throw against Iowa State, the touchdown to Charlie Jones. That was a beautiful throw. And it was a huge play in the game because, again, it was a defensive struggle like every other game has been this year. So I am an advocate for them using both, and they may do that. I'm a little bit nervous with Kirk and just anointing Spencer this early. I don't know why we need to. There's no injury involved here. Why do we need to give Michigan the nod as to who we're playing? There's no ethical or moral reason why we have to do that. It's not injury related. I don't know why we have to do that. Why not just say Petrus or Padilla? Now, maybe there are reasons. Maybe it's from a morale standpoint on the team, so everybody's locked and loaded for one guy. Maybe that's how Kirk thinks, and I would guess that maybe it is how he thinks. But I hope that they're willing to use both guys, because I do believe that both guys can be useful. They bring it, especially Mark. This is something we didn't talk with Justin about. As confident as I am, I also realize that this is going to be probably the best pass rush Iowa has faced all year, which is kind of scary because Wisconsin's pass rush always gets home against Iowa, as it did this year. Penn State's pass rush is really good. So that's scary to think about. Iowa's offensive line has improved. I don't think there's any question about that. Mason Richmond did come back and play on Friday, Mark, and that was a question we had asked before was, will he play? He did. I have no reason to think he's suffered a setback, so he should play. Again, the offensive line has improved overall. So can they protect Spencer enough? I hope so. Hope they use the screen game a little. We had a 10-year-old caller from Colorado during our show the other night, Mark, who called in and said, we got to use the screen game more. Don and I are like, amen. I mean, let's use the screen game more. So that's a way to sort of negate some of that pressure. Aiden Hutchinson's really good. He's just really, really good. There's no question about that. And it's going to be tough to get the ball downfield. It's going to be tough to generate points. You're right. I still think Iowa has the tools to get the ball downfield with some shots. I've said that basically in every game Iowa's played. They started to take more shots once Padilla was starting against Minnesota. They took a lot of shots against the Gophers, and which isn't surprising because we saw what Minnesota forced Wisconsin to kind of do the same thing. So that's kind of how Minnesota wants you to play, and Iowa was actually able to pull it off. But I think Keegan Johnson, he's got to have a big game. I did see some sad news today that Tyrone Tracy's had a death in the family, or I guess I believe it was his girlfriend's father that passed away. So, he's an indie guy. I'd like to see him be able to get back involved. I know we've talked about him and the difficulties there with playing time and just some stuff that's happened. I'd like to see him be involved on Saturday. That'd be real nice. You'd have to think Charlie Jones needs to come up with a big return. It'd be nice if Iowa could get another Henry Marquez play on special teams where you block a kick and then, Kyler Fisher runs it in. So, those are going to be you hit it on the dot a little while ago, Mark, when you brought up turnovers. Turnovers and special teams. So defense and special teams are going to be the key to keep Iowa involved. And then you hope Iowa can generate some points somewhere. And that's been that has been the recipe for success all year for Iowa. And it's not going to change. It's a better team, so they're going to have to do it that much better and maybe produce that, many more explosive plays or plays on special teams or defense. But again, I have a feeling that they're going to be locked and loaded. And I have that feeling Iowa will win. I could be dead wrong, but I'm going to go to the grave predicting that, Mark. And either way, it's a fascinating game. There's no pressure on Iowa fans. There's no way we can leave and we'd be disappointed if Iowa doesn't put up a good fight. But just to be back in the West in the Big Ten championship game and West West champions is a great feeling. Despite some of the struggles, there's just no. That's what I love about this, and maybe that's why I feel so good. There's just no pressure. Michigan's the one playing with all the pressure. And Mark, maybe before we go, take the final few minutes. Do you want to talk about the playoff situation, because you're obviously well versed on the scenarios and how this committee tends to function?
So here in a few minutes, we're going to watch it all together. So we've got a stream set up to watch the playoff rankings unveiling. So join us for that. I also want to make sure that we hit at least 2 super chats that came in. One is posted on the screen. In regards to the playoff rankings, check out Corey's video posted on the Iowa channel that runs down the Hawkeyes' path to a playoff berth, which is not ridiculous. Yes, it is. It's a narrow path, obviously, with 2 losses, but it's not ridiculous in any such way. And it's not even just one path. There are a few different ways that they can get there. So an 11-2 Big Ten champion with 2 lost teams playing in other championship games is certainly a good thing for the Big Ten and for Iowa in particular. You would think. Now, you brought the Pac-12 into play, even though we would hope that the Big Ten champion, regardless of who it is, gets the nod over the Pac-12 champion. But you don't know what the committee's going to do with an Oregon team that beat Ohio State and is already higher ranked.
I think Oregon and Iowa at 11-2 apiece, each with a championship. Oregon gets the nod because of that Ohio State win. That's the kicker on that one. I believe that now.
Sense, this Iowa win over Michigan matches the Ohio State win, and then you play in a more difficult conference.
Does it match it, though? I don't know if it matches it. Winning in Columbus as opposed to winning on a neutral against Michigan. I mean, maybe I can see where you make that argument, absolutely, and I would probably do that, especially being an Iowa guy. The other scenario was somebody brought up on our first of all, I had a lot of mixed bag responses from people after posting that video. Some guy said, "Yeah, this video should be 8 seconds long." The answer is no. I'm like, I should repost a video that's literally 8 seconds and just say no, it's not possible and then list his username. But anyways, somebody brought up Baylor. They said, I don't think Iowa's going to get in over an 11-2 Baylor team given strength of schedule. And I look back at Baylor's wins, and yeah, they beat BYU, which is a really, really good win. It's a non-con win. They beat BYU. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat Oklahoma. They do have a bad loss to TCU. Iowa has a couple lopsided losses, but you could not say Iowa has a bad loss. Those are two good teams they lost to. So the question is, would Iowa's wins against Michigan this Saturday, Minnesota, Penn State, and at Iowa State — I know Iowa State's 7-5, but it's a road win. So would those 4 wins, plus the fact they don't have any bad losses, trump what I think are a better group of wins from Baylor in the 3 that I listed, Mark? What do you think?
So Baylor also defeated Iowa State, or did they lose? They lost to Oklahoma State.
They did beat. You're right.
Okay, so they beat Iowa State. So we can basically cancel those out to a certain extent, although Iowa did win the game on the road. I think they won them in similar fashion score-wise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State. Are we missing anyone from a quality win standpoint? Those are really the 3.
Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, yeah, Iowa State, yeah. There's not. That's it.
Versus Oklahoma, Oklahoma State,
BYU. Those are better wins.
And it pretty much ends there. Are they?
The TCU loss, though, is that's a mark against.
I don't know that they're better wins.
Oklahoma State's 11-1. Oklahoma's what, 10-2? I mean, I know we can't just look at record. I get that, but
yeah, because Penn State, I'm not looking at record as much because I think that they're a top 25 team. Now they're going to look at 7-5, but they play a brutal schedule.
Yeah, so but you're helping my argument, Mark, that it's not obvious, and that's why I said I think somebody said I don't think the Big 12 championship matters. Yeah, it does, because they're not taking an 11-2 Iowa champion over a 12-1 Big 12 champion, correct, Mark? They're not taking Iowa over Oklahoma State in that scenario. Can you imagine? No. So they need Baylor to win. They need both of those teams to be 11-2. Somebody said too that I'm putting way too much importance on conference championships, and maybe I am, but I just think again, you're not taking Ohio State's not getting in 11-2 over an 11-2 Iowa team, regardless of their strength of their schedule. If Iowa's a conference champion, 10-2 Ohio State team, that's not happening. And again, 11-2 Oklahoma State without a title, Baylor 11-2 with a title would be right there with Iowa, as would Oregon. And then who am I missing? Who's the other 11-2 team that? No, that would be it, right? Notre Dame's 11-1.
If you want to factor in the ACC champion,
I don't want to do that.
I don't think they're going to get.
We'll see what the ranking. Iowa fans should be interested in your watch party tonight on this channel, Mark, because we'll see what happens with the rankings. Because Iowa was 16. I want to see how much forward momentum they get. Not a great win against Nebraska. It was a road win. They won, and then of course there's been some movement ahead of them. So it'll be interesting to see where they put Iowa this week prior to the Big Ten title game. But it's not likely. I'm not claiming that, but it is possible.
Yeah. I've got Iowa at 10.
And I think, again, you have some chaos ahead of you. You can move, theoretically, you could move 6 spots up. It's never happened before, I'm sure, but it is possible to move 6 spots up in 1 week.
Not only has it never happened, it's never happened to this degree, meaning that Iowa is coming in at number 16 in that same rankings, there is no team that's been elevated higher from a 6th spot at the lowest to a college football playoff ranking.
Yeah. So it's not likely. But just to recap, Georgia has to beat Bama, right? Because if Georgia loses, they're still in. Bama and Georgia are both in.
And they better beat them by a lot.
Yeah,
Bama's going to get a lot of play in that room if they're 11-2 and they only lose by a field goal. Even if they lose by 10, people are going to say in that room.
I don't think that's right.
Best teams in the country.
Well, but that's just not how it works. In my opinion, it should be based on. We talked about it. So it'd be based off resume.
It should be. But when the committee gets pushed to the wall, when they go to their various data points,
it's a disgrace.
When they have to give up on an argument, they say, we're just charged to select the 4 best teams.
It's a disgrace. Georgia needs to beat Bama convincingly. I agree with you. Houston has to beat Cincinnati. Cincinnati's out in that case. They're not getting in 12-1 as a non-conference champion. I mean, come on.
No.
Baylor needs to beat Oklahoma State. Excuse me. And hopefully Iowa can. And then Utah needs to beat Oregon. And if that were to happen, then Oregon moves to 10-3 and they're out. Utah's not getting in. Iowa over Michigan. It's not that far-fetched.
You believe Utah needs to beat Oregon. I'm not so sure.
It's the best case scenario for Iowa.
Yeah.
That Utah beats Oregon. You're right. It wouldn't be impossible. And I guess it wouldn't be impossible for Iowa to still get in if Oklahoma State won, because theoretically you could have Georgia, Notre Dame. You're not sold on Notre Dame getting in at 11-1 over an 11-2 Iowa team, are you? That's an interesting discussion. But I think the committee, again, is going to do them a lot of favors because they're Notre Dame. If they're 11-1, they should be punished, in my opinion, for not being in a conference and playing a championship game. And they're not. They don't get punished for it.
They should decidedly be better and have a better resume than the other competing team.
So I could argue, Mark, if they played in a conference champion, I could argue they'd lose and be an 11-2 non-conference champion. So, conference non-champion. So I could make that argument. But again, I think Georgia is in. I think Notre Dame is in. I think it would take a lot for the committee not to put them in at that point. And then, again, those last 2 spots would come down to 3 teams: Baylor, Oregon, and Iowa.
And Iowa plays the best schedule, in my
estimation.
You
think they do? Because I have people telling me, Iowa's schedule sucks. Of those 3 teams, you think Iowa plays the best schedule, including Oklahoma State?
It would have helped had they played the upper echelon of the East, obviously. But
we thought they did. We thought they had. We didn't think Michigan State was going to be what they were. We thought Indiana. We thought Penn State. Yeah. Those were 2 of the best teams in the East, and they ended up not being. So, but yeah, it's an interesting discussion. And again, rankings tonight. My podcast for everybody from the Hawkeye of the Storm will be out tomorrow. So catch that on my channel. We'll continue to pump out coverage right here on this channel, Iowa at the Voice of College Football. And then Friday night, we'll have Iowa postgame for basketball on the from the Hawkeye of the Storm channel. And then Saturday, we'll be here for the postgame Big Ten title game.
Hey, Corey, please catch this super chat that's on the screen. Then I'm going to directly post the second one.
What do you mean catch it?
Read the one that's on the screen.
Oh, Dave from Dave?
Yes, please.
Okay, Iowa fans, it's time to return the favor and vote for Minnesota for the Outback Bowl. We scratched your back. You can scratch ours. I love Dave. I don't know if you saw, but it was the best comment. The best call on Saturday was from Dave. Wes Blewett says Iowa stinks, but they have a chance to beat Michigan. The best part is Iowa's out of the college football playoff invitational regardless. Yeah, because you might be right, because it's an invitational.
Yes, it is.
That'd be the only reason why we would eliminate them. Can you imagine if the committee came out and said today, somebody needs to ask, because doesn't ESPN always ask them? The ESPN needs to grow a pair and stop working for the SEC and say, hey, if the Big Ten, if Iowa were to win, is the Big Ten conference champion in? And they're not going to give you a straight answer, but I'd be anxious to see what they'd say, because they should not eliminate that. And I'm sure they wouldn't. They're not going to eliminate it a week early, but that would be an interesting discussion.
And if Iowa wins the game by a single point and Michigan plays a great game, does Michigan get like consideration that Alabama will receive for losing a conference championship?
Then wouldn't we also have to give that consideration to Oklahoma State if they were to lose?
Well, I'm giving it to the Big Ten based on being arguably the best conference in the nation. I don't believe that it is, but I think the argument is legitimate.
the problem is then the naysayers will fall back on saying, yeah, it's the best conference in the country, but Iowa avoided the best teams in the conference.
But Michigan did not, and they lost the conference championship.
And it's really hard to win a Big Ten title. Can we agree with that? I mean, Ohio State, well, you're an Ohio State fan. Let's not ask you if it's really
five out of 7 is not that difficult.
Yeah, that's true. But anyways, so yeah, it's a fun. This is awesome, be in this position for Iowa fans in general. And listen, if Iowa beats Michigan, including you Michigan fans listening, you ought to be rooting for Iowa to make the playoff. You don't want Iowa, if somehow, I know you don't believe that they're going to win, but if Iowa somehow wins, you should not be rooting against Iowa to make the playoff. That's just being a fool if you do that. Did we get all the super chats, Mark? I think we missed at least one.
I believe we did. And thank you so much, everyone. We had consistently about 500 on the line. Is that another one there?
Yeah, I think we missed at least one. Mark, tell these dirty Buckeyes to stop holding the tickets hostage and sell them to their cousin Michigan. So you guys are holding the tickets hostage?
I have no idea.
Oh, and then one more here from Austin. Could a 2-win team make the playoff this year? I think we just answered that.
Yeah. And do we have another one here?
I hire Corey to be Iowa's offensive coordinator, then we're in trouble Saturday. He's a Michigan fan, so thank you. But I hope we're in trouble. I hope you guys are in trouble either way. I think again, I've given my opinion on that, but I think that's like a compliment. I've gotten ripped a lot today, so I'll take that as a compliment.
There's another one.
I think that's likely to happen.
Oh, it's
right?
the same. It's the one you caught. Okay.
I think it's likely to happen.
I think we're
somewhere, if the right things fall into place.
All right, everyone. From the Hawkeye of the Storm, lock it in over there. If you're subscribed here, and you should be, then you should subscribe there as well from the Hawkeye of the Storm right here on YouTube or on your favorite audio platform. We're going to do our watch party in just a few minutes. I got to set up my TV and make sure I'm all ready to go. So we will do that in just a few minutes. So keep it right here.